Welcome to the DIY Goalie podcast, where hosts and goalie coaches Nathan Park and Connor Monday share their insights on how to become a better goalie. How are we doing today, goalies? Welcome to another episode of the DIY Goalie podcast. We are glad to have you here again with us today. It's a solo episode with just myself. Connor is a little under the weather today, so I'm going to kind of be switching it up a little bit today, just kind of with the last minute change. So we're going to talk about communication and kind of the role that it plays with goalies and kind of how important it can be as a goalie to properly communicate and what that looks like. Before we get started, though, I just kind of wanted to say a big thanks to everybody out there, whether you're returning for multiple episodes or this is your first episode. Thank you for tuning in. We don't really kind of push this too much, but it would help us a lot if you guys can share the show with a friend, if you guys can leave ratings and reviews on whatever platform that you guys are listening on. If you're on YouTube, liking and subscribing, all that good stuff, that just helps us kind of grow the show a little bit more, get in front of more goalies, and all of that good stuff helps us out a little bit. So we very much appreciate that. Just as a bit of an update for you guys, I am in the process of working on the new website that's going to combine all of the True North goaltending and the DIY goalie stuff together. I'm hoping to kind of have that done probably sometime in May. Kind of depends on how much time I get to work on it, but that is in the works, and we'll keep you updated on that and let you guys know once that change has been made. So for now, you can still access the DIYgoalie.com, get everything on there. But soon we will be moving all that over to the True North Goaltending website. So just to kind of dive right into it, we've touched on it a little bit in a few episodes briefly, but I think it warrants a deep dive, kind of talking about communication, why it's important, and how to go about it properly. Most of what we're going to talk about relates to on ice communication, but we are going to touch a little bit on off ice stuff too, with a little bit of the different parties that you might come across throughout your career or situation. So first off, I want to talk about the on ice component. I've started to do a little bit of a better job at this. I think I always like to criticize and make jokes about how our defensemen aren't really there for us as goalies, which most of the time isn't true. We just obviously like to give them a hard time, but I want to really stress the importance of you guys getting on the same page as your defensemen. It makes your lives easier, it makes their lives easier, and it makes for just a better team game, a team experience if you can go out and start breakouts because you and your defenseman are on the same page. If you can say a couple words and they know what you mean and they can cover an open guy or whatever the case is. If you guys are on the same page, if you're constantly talking, it helps you to succeed. It helps them to succeed. It helps the team to succeed. So that's kind of why it's important to really make sure that, we're being vocal in the net, whether it's while the play is going on, whether it's during intermission, at practice, whatever the case is. The more that you guys can talk with your defensemen and forwards too, but more often than not, we're kind of talking about defensemen. So one of the easiest things, or kind of across the board things that I think you guys all should be thinking about doing, is figuring out how you guys want to approach your breakout. So depending on what level you play, you might be in a position where you're starting to play the puck, or you have been for years now, whatever the case is. But the more that you can get out of the net and help start your breakout, the less time that the puck's going to be in the zone. And you need the proper support to be able to make that happen. So if you guys can have some time at some point to sit down with your defensemen, if you want, you can have your coach there too to talk about things with them. But just making sure that you guys have a couple set plays that are easily identified by quick words or phrases. So what I usually tend to recommend when it comes to communication is, at least with playing the puck as a goalie, is kind of having four different options. So forehand, backhand, set, or rim. And that kind of keeps things simple. That gives you four potential things to do when you come out and you stop a puck behind the net, or you come out to play the puck, or whatever the case is. There's four options. You know what they are. And if the defenseman yells one of those words, you know exactly what it means, right? So forehand obviously means you're passing to the defenseman on your forehand side. Backhand means you're passing on the backhand side. Rim means they don't like what they're seeing and they're telling you to just get it high and hard off the glass. Or set means they want to come back and pick up the puck, so you just leave it behind the net. So that's kind of the four that I usually recommend to start off with. If there's something else that you guys do, something that works better for you guys, then obviously implement that. But that's where having that talk with your defenseman, with your coaching staff, can really make a difference on that and can really help you get on the same page and make that transition a little bit smoother. Because I'm sure we've all been there where we come out and stop the puck and we go to play it. We don't know where we want to go. There's kind of a little bit of confusion, turns into a turnover, and all of a sudden a guy's in front of the net with a wide open net and taps the puck in. We've seen it happen at the NHL level, at all levels. Um, I've done it quite a few times in my career. I wasn't exactly the best at playing the puck, but just as much as possible, if you can avoid getting yourself in that situation, obviously the better. And that's kind of where that communication ahead of time comes into play, so that you guys can kind of be on the same page and know what to do when the situation comes to it. So at some point, when it comes to breakouts, talk with your defenseman beforehand, talk with your coaching staff too, to know what their expectations are. And then also ask too if you can run some of that stuff in practice. Like when you guys work on breakouts or systems or anything like that, just be like, hey, can we work on all four options, or can we work on, dumping the puck into me every time, so we can work on playing that puck from the goalie out. So once everyone's on the same page, and that's kind of going to be a main theme for a lot of this episode, is being on the same page. But once you are, that means that you can work on it in practice. The coaching staff knows what you're doing. They can tell you what their expectations are. The defenseman can tell you what they like from you. You can tell them what you prefer. All that good stuff kind of makes things simple. So away from the puck playing side of things, there's a few other things to talk about with your defenseman and to kind of shore up a little bit, I guess. Odd man rushes is one. So again, get a couple easy phrases that you guys talk about beforehand, to get on the same page, so that when you yell them on an odd man rush, your defenseman knows exactly what to do. So if it's, say, a 2-on-1, you can say, okay, on 2-on-1s, I'm either going to say take the pass or take the shot, right? More often than not, as goalies, we're going to want the defenseman to take the pass. But sometimes when the guy with the puck kind of bumbles it a little bit, he fumbles that puck, it bounces off his stick, or if he just kind of, is getting himself a little too close to the boards or something like that, you might recognize that and tell your defenseman to pressure him, try and get that puck off his stick. So that's basically the only two options on a 2-on-1 that you're going to tell your defenseman. So that one's pretty easy. A 3-on-2 is a little bit of a different story. Again, just kind of go through the potential situations with your defenseman ask what they like to see or like to do, what they're seeing. You can kind of tell them what you would like. Again, ideally, we'd like just a straight shot with no lateral plays. Um, but it's a bit of a different situation with the 3-on-2s because you might be yelling trailer, because there's a guy that's, you know, trailing. He's kind of a little higher, and your defensemen are really sucking back to the net, leaving that guy in the high slot wide open. You might yell backdoor because there's the wide guy is snuck behind one of your defensemen to the back door. Again, you might say take shot or take shooter because, you know, they're kind of fumbling the puck a little bit. There's a few different options, a lot more on a 3-on-2 than there would be on a 2-on-1. But again, if you guys kind of sit down and discuss that, you can kind of say, okay, when I say this, I want you to be doing this, right? So that when it happens in a game, it's automatic. Nobody's kind of taking those couple of seconds to process what you've said. It just kind of happens. The other thing, too, this kind of goes for in zone play as well. Um, if there's a backdoor threat, you can yell to them backdoor. If they're in front of you screening you and you can't see, you know, you can say can't see or screened or something like that. Um, these are all situations that the more you guys can talk ahead of time and kind of figure out what means what and what the expectation is, that's when you really start having success with it when it comes to the actual game situation. Uh, Make sure too, when you're communicating, that you're loud, that you're clear, and that you're concise, but you're not doing it in a way that's, I don't know, rude or like condescending or kind of having any of that negative connotation to it. Make sure that your tone of voice is firm, but it's not negative. You want to make sure that they can hear you and they can understand you, but you're not yelling for the sake of yelling. You're not being negative. You're not putting anybody down, and you're not like condescending or anything like that. Just get your point across, be clear, and that's kind of how we want to go about it. So, big things, talk ahead of time. Tell your defenseman what you expect. Tell them some of the common things you see and get their feedback too, and ask what they see, ask what they like, ask what makes sense to them. Because there's going to be times where, you know, maybe you set a puck and you're back to your net quick, and then you can see all down the ice, and your defenseman maybe after a change is a little late getting back to the puck, and you can yell at him wheel wheel wheel, meaning skate the puck. You can say reverse because there's a guy coming down the strong side there to pressure him. D to D, you know, all of this stuff, if you can kind of clarify what it means beforehand, we'll be in a much better spot. So work on it in practice too. Um, when you guys are running system drills, when you guys are doing breakouts, when you guys are doing power play, penalty kill, whatever the case is, communicate with your guys, practice that communication, and make sure that they know what you mean too, right? Like if you need to in the middle of practice, if there is some sort of miscommunication, stop and have that conversation quick and be like, hey, when I say that, I mean this. Or, hey, when you said that, I thought you meant this. What did you actually mean? Right. That's the time to hash that out. So that's not happening in the middle of a game. And again, that goes for if you're playing the puck, that goes for if they're skating or moving the puck in zone. That goes for well, the play is in zone. If there's a backdoor threat or a screen, anything like that, um, all of that's fair game. So in reality, if I'm being honest with you guys, you should be the loudest player on the ice. You should be the most talkative player on the ice. And I know for some goalies, that's a little tough for you guys. I was kind of in that boat. I'm a lot less of a talker, I guess. I'm not really one to want to yell at people and kind of have that outward expression, but at the same time, it's so important as a goalie because you see a lot of stuff that the players don't, just because of the fact that you are always kind of facing up ice pretty much, right? So the other thing too is if you're playing the position right, like if you watch the NHL goalies, they are always shoulder checking. They're always scanning the ice, seeing where things are. So you need to be playing like that too, and that allows you to pick up stuff that your players, your teammates might not be picking up. That's transpiring. That's kind of happening in front of you, right? So that's why it's really important for you guys to be communicating. You need to, even if you're one of those goalies that's a little introverted, that doesn't really like talking or being loud or putting yourself out there, when you get on the ice, you got to find a way to put that on the back burner, right? Like I always make the joke that goalies either don't stop talking or don't talk at all. And there seems to be no middle ground. So for those of you on the side of don't talk at all, find a way to get vocal. And that starts in practice. That might even start at home before you're comfortable with it, doing it in front of other people. Find a room in your house and just go and practice yelling like man on, or wheel, or, forehand, or whatever the case is. Practice some of those things, practice yelling it, practice being firm and clear and loud so that your teammates can understand when you actually get to it in a practice or in a game. The other thing to do too is to kind of communicate with your defensemen off the ice as well. Talk about your systems, talk about what you want to see from them, talk about kind of your expectations, and get them to give you their expectations too, right? Like, you know, in certain situations, they might want you to cover a puck. In certain situations, they might want you to play the rebound out. So instead of covering it, they might want you to pass it to them quickly in the corner or something like that, right? And so those are the situations that if you can have a plan going into it ahead of time, it makes it a lot easier to kind of everybody get on the same page, right? Um, that's when you kind of want to have a meeting. Like if you guys don't do this going into next season, at the start of the season after your tryouts, ask your coaching staff if they can put together a meeting between you and the coaching staff and your defensemen and sit down and discuss. And then you can ask your coaches, like, hey, what do you want to see from us? Like, I would like this, this, and this. This is how I like to communicate with my defensemen. I want to make sure they're on the same page with me. Is that okay with you? Do you have any suggestions? Would you like to change anything about that? Blah, blah, blah. Right. So it's really important that you guys kind of get out of your shell a little bit as best you can. If you are kind of one of those more timid goalies, practice at home by yourself, then maybe get a couple friends or maybe siblings or mom and dad or whatever the case is, to kind of practice with them and then kind of start building from there and take it to the team. Because communication and public speaking, if you want to call it that, anything like that is a skill. And like every other skill out there, it takes practice and repetition. So that's going to really help you get over kind of that hump of, uncertainty and of doubt. The other thing too, when it comes to communication, is being able to not only just use your voice, but kind of use your body language too. Like you'll see a lot of NHL goalies, if you kind of watch them, they like to be pointing with their glove or with their stick or whatever the case is. You'll see it, for example, if somebody like does a hard rim, if they dump the puck in with a hard rim and the goalie can't get to it, they'll point over to the side that the puck's going around to, and they'll kind of yell, like something around, or I won't get it, or whatever, something like that. They'll be yelling and they'll be pointing as well. So pointing can help. Um, a little bit, especially if your defenseman's skating backwards to you or like facing you. They're skating forwards, but they're skating back to the zone facing you. You can kind of be pointing and tell them where the threats are, where the puck's going, all of that good stuff. So it's not just limited to just using your voice. Use your body as best you can too. Obviously, in the middle of the play, we want to be a little bit more leery of that, because if we start moving our hands around and stuff like that, well, they have the puck at the point. That's definitely not ideal. But yeah, just be aware of that being an option as well, that you can incorporate your hands, your stick. I don't really know how you can incorporate other parts of your body, but I guess you could if you figure out a way to. But that kind of helps with the overall experience as opposed to just using your voice. So outside of your team, it's also really important that you guys communicate with your coaches as well. Um, we did touch on this a few weeks ago, I think, when we were talking about tough coach situations. Somebody had kind of sent in a listener question or something like that. But we were talking about having the tough conversations with your coach if you need to. But just in general, having good rapport and having that open line of communication with your coaching staff is really important. Now, every situation is going to be different. There are going to be situations where maybe that relationship with the coach is a little strained. And in that instance, you might be more inclined to have less communication with the coaching staff, which fair enough. And at the same time, too, you don't want to be swung to one side of the spectrum where you're bugging your coach all the time about everything. Like, it's good to be communicative and open with your coaching staff, but there also needs to be a limit, right? Like, it is a business. They have their own jobs to do. Even if they are like a minor hockey dad on the coaching staff, they have other stuff that they're focused on and worried about and have to do. So don't be bugging them all the time. But if you have something that you need to talk about, go to your coaching staff. Don't be afraid to have an open conversation with them. And I would say 90 to 95% of the coaches out there are receptive to that and open to that. You'll have a few outliers that really aren't approachable at all, which is unfortunate. And in that instance, you kind of have to navigate a little differently there. But if there's something that's going on in practice that you're not really liking, bring it up to the coach. Like, if you're getting too many shots too close together, if somebody specifically is always shooting at your head and they're not receptive to you asking about or asking them to stop or talking to them about it, or if you have a guy in the corner who's always shooting at you, like the side of your body, while somebody else is coming down to shoot as part of the drill, um, that's stuff that you can go to your coach about, talk to them about, be open about. The other thing, like we talked about earlier, is be involved with the systems. Ask them about what they expect from you in certain situations. Ask them how certain systems work or how they are designed, why the coaches are doing it that way. Ask if there's a way that you can help or benefit the team with. Like, some coaches are very anti goalies playing the puck because they think that, they're constantly going to be putting out turnovers or something like that. Have that conversation and be like, hey, I've practiced my puck playing. I would like to be incorporate. Can we run a couple systems drills where I can show you that we can be a part of the breakout, right? Like I said, too, if you can go to them and be like, hey, can we have a meeting with our defensemen to just go over some stuff to be on the same page? Like, a lot of times coaches really appreciate that initiative when it's productive initiative, right? If you are finding ways to be better or to help the team be better, they're usually pretty open to that. And then if you also have any sort of like constructive feedback, if you can go to them in the right way and just express like, hey, this is not working for me because XYZ. Can we change it up a little bit? Here's what would help, right? So, for example, like in my third year of junior A, I was in Ontario, and there was a few guys on our team that were notorious for coming to the bottom of the circle and taking their shot at the bottom of the circle on every drill, including warm-up drills. And it used to drive me nuts because for me, I always got into practice by being able to track a puck, and I needed distance for that. So it didn't matter how hard the shot was. Like, I even would make the joke, I don't even care if you take a slap shot to my head. If it's from the blue line, that's okay, because that gives me enough time to track, even in a warm-up drill, right? But I really didn't like it, didn't get me into the practice when guys came 2 feet in front of me and took their shot. So I went to my coach and I said, hey, can we kind of design these, like just the first drill of practice, just so we get the shots around the blue line or like a couple steps in from the blue line? Because that allows me to track the puck better. That allows me to get set. That allows me to do the stuff I need to do to be good for practice as well as be good for games. And so he said, yeah, no problem. So we made the adjustments, and the rest of the year was awesome. Like, that was probably, the best year I had for warm up drills and practice, just because I had that conversation with my coach. So don't be afraid. Like, I find a lot of times players just kind of almost seem scared of the coaching staff. Um, don't be like, they're there most of the time to help you get better. Again, there are some outliers out there, but more often than not, they're there to help you out. They're there to help you get better. They're there to help the team get better and develop and all of that stuff. So they are usually open and willing to communicate if you go about it the right way. So again, just like we were talking about when you're yelling at your defenseman on the ice, don't go in with any sort of negative connotations, negative body language, any sort of kind of attitude or condescension or anything like that. Just go in, even if it is something that is a concern or an issue, be, you know, an adult about it, have a proper conversation, and just express your side of view in a constructive way. And more often than not, that can kind of lead to helping to resolve the issues. Again, too, when it comes to playing time, if for whatever reason you're not happy with the amount of time that you're playing or whatever, you can go and talk to your coach about that, communicate that, just say, hey, what can I do in practice or away from the rink or whatever it is? What can I do to put in the work to show you that I deserve more playing time or something like that? Ask them like what it is that they're seeing that they're not liking that's leading to you not being in the net as much. And a lot of times they'll be straight up with you. They'll be like, well, we feel like you're not battling on pucks very much. We'd like to see you battle more. Or they might say, we feel your skating's kind of struggling a little bit. You're not getting across on lateral plays very well, or whatever the case is. A lot of times they'll be pretty straight up about it. And then that gives you something to identify and really focus in on to kind of improve and show them that you're serious and kind of want to put in the work. Again, you'll have some coaches out there that aren't aren't as helpful or good to talk to, and it's unfortunate. But if that's the case, there's kind of other channels you can take. You can maybe go higher up in the organization if there's really bad issues. But overall, just kind of like your teammates, have a good open rapport with your coaching staff, have that communication line with them, and just get on the same page. Again, main theme of today, everybody on the same page usually leads to better results. So that's kind of what you want to aim for there. Just one last thing too, when it comes to talking with your coaches, just pick the right time, pick the right place to be able to talk to them. A lot of times it's not Or sometimes if you pick the wrong time to go and talk to them, it can kind of make a mountain out of a molehill, if you will. Um, so like if you guys were up 4-0 and then you ended up losing 5-4 or something like that, and your coach comes in kicking the garbage can, I think 5 minutes after he leaves, the post game speech is not the time to go in and ask, "Hey, why didn't I get the start today?" You know what I mean? Like, use a little bit of kind of common sense on that one, I guess. Feel the room, um, and pick the right time to have those conversations with your coaching staff if you are going to have one, because that can put you in a bad situation and paint you in a bad light if you just have bad timing on bringing something up to them. So pick a good time, pick a good spot. You don't really want to be having discussions about certain things in front of everybody on the team. You might have to wait until you can catch them like one on one kind of thing. So just be mindful of that as well, because coaches do take note of that kind of stuff, like character stuff away from the ice plays into them picking teams and ice time and stuff like that too. So you want to make sure that you can kind of minimize your negative impact and in the way that they see you, and kind of make those right decisions. And kind of the last topic that I wanted to touch on, when it comes to the communication, is kind of more for the younger goalies out there. But communication between goalie and goalie parent. That's another one too. That's a very important relationship that can be a big deciding factor in success or not. So goalies, for you guys out there, kind of similar to talking to your coach. A lot of times we can maybe be a little bit scared of, talking with our parents about certain things. Um, but don't be afraid to bring it up. If you feel like your parents are pushing you a little bit too much and you need a break, express that again in a good way at the right time. But just having that open communication, letting them know how you feel and what you need from them. Because at the end of the day, the parents, they usually just want what's best for the kids. And sometimes the way they go about it may not seem like that. So that's where that communication comes into play. So if you say, "Hey, I'm really burnt out this week and you're pushing me to go to the gym, you're pushing me to go to the outdoor rink on top of my practice. I've got exams at school this week. I just need a little bit of rest. Can you just give me a day or two of a break so I can reset?" Blah, 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 whatever the case is. Um, More often than not, the parents don't really realize the impact that they have on the kids with something that they're doing, and in their minds they're doing what they can to support their kids. So sometimes just having that voice from the child can really help the parent get some perspective, right? So goalies, if there's something going on that you need to have that conversation with your parents about, again, just be courteous about it. Just bring it up and say, "This is how I'm feeling. Is there any way that we can maybe change this a little bit?" Blah, blah, blah. Pick the right time to do it, and go about it with a professional kind of attitude and manner. And more often than not, that'll kind of result in a productive conversation. Um, the other thing, though, too, is finding a way to communicate not just when there's issues, but when things are good as well, right? One example, just back when I played minor hockey, anytime after a game, what I did with my dad for a few years once we started doing it was I'd get into the car, we'd start driving, and I'd be like, "Okay, what's one thing that I need to improve on from the game today?" And he would say, "Well, I saw this and this, and thought that that was because you weren't moving across as well, or you weren't seeing the puck as well, or whatever the case is." And then I'd be like, "Okay, and what's one thing I did well?" "Well, you battled hard and, you didn't give up on pucks and you made a couple unbelievable saves because of it, right? Like that's just, off the top of my head, but just in general, like being able to have that conversation constructively about when things aren't going right and when things are going right, that can kind of go a long way into building that good relationship too between goalie and goalie parent. Because the more that a goalie can feel supported by their parents and, kind of feel like they're there for them, the more that translates to success on the ice. So it's really important that you guys kind of get that good open line of communication. When it comes to the parents, just make sure that even though we all know that being a goalie parent is probably one of the most stressful things out there, do the best you can to not make a big deal out of things. Don't stress out about things, right? Like, don't emphasize, oh, it's a playoff game tonight. You have to be good. They know. The goalies know the situation. They know how they need to best prepare for their situation. And sometimes kind of putting a spotlight on it can make them a little bit more nervous or feel like there's a little bit more pressure on them. So, a lot of times for goalie parents, the best advice you can kind of have is be supportive, help them find a routine that works for them, and then kind of almost leave it up to them to come to you a little bit, right? Like wait for them to ask you for something to work on or wait for them to ask you, for XYZ, right? A lot of times, like in my experience, anyways, personally, and I think from what I've seen, a lot of other goalies feel this way too, but we know regardless of what the situation is, we know when we're struggling, we know when we're playing well, we know when something's not right and we need to change it or whatever the case is. So a lot of times your goalie will come to you and talk to you about whatever it is, right? So you can kind of almost sit back, try and keep your stresses as internal as you can, or at least wait till they're on the ice and you're in the stands, and then you can break out your 5 stress balls or whatever it is. But the big thing is to just let them kind of dictate how you guys communicate as best as you can. Now, I know you guys know best, quote unquote, like parents know best, quote unquote, right? But at the same time, too, like they're the athletes, they're navigating their own experience and what works for them and what doesn't work for them. So please listen when they come to you with something about their game and be open and be supportive about it. Now it's good too to give them a different perspective if there's something like, I don't know, say they want to play for a specific team and there might be another team out there that's a better option for them. You can be like, okay, sounds good. I hear what you're saying. Here's though just a few things to think about, right? Like if you want to go to this team, they don't provide as much goalie development. This team over here does, blah, 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 right? Like you can kind of go about it professionally, cordially. You guys want to make sure that when you're talking, it's open, it's collaborative, and both sides are kind of listening to each other. That's the big thing, because sometimes I find, and this isn't just with hockey, but kids can kind of seem like or feel like they're not being heard or being listened to because the parents are just like, no, this is how it is because I said so, right? And even if that's going to be the decision you make, where you do make that decision of we are going to team B instead of team A, at least have them say their piece and then have that conversation with them and explain why, and just be like, hey, I understand this is why we're doing this, blah, blah, blah. And that's kind of that, right? So it's really important that there's, that open line of communication, and the support is there. That's the big thing that a lot of goalies are looking for, is just the support, and a lot of times just the soundboard, right? Like I said, when they're struggling, they know, so they might have to come in the car after a game and just be like, "Hey, I've been having a tough time at school, and now I go to hockey and I'm just tired and frustrated and it's not working out. Do you have any suggestions, or can you help dad or mom or whatever?" Right. And that's when you can, you know, be like, okay, yeah, we can do this, this, and this. We can change this, and whatever the case is. And that kind of helps them feel heard and feel supported. The other thing that's important with the goalie and goalie parent communication, kind of similar to coaches, but having some expectations ahead of time and having conversations ahead of time, so that everybody kind of is on that same page. Like, for example, if you go and talk to your player or your goalie ahead of time and be like, hey, we need to be at the rink an hour and a half before your game. Your team's doing a warm up, and then there's power play meetings, and then you get dressed. This is something that is new this year from last year because you made the club team instead of the house team. So, this is our expectation. We will be leaving 2 hours before the game because it's 20 minutes to the rink, and that gives us a little bit of time to be early. Um, being, telling them, being upfront about, hey, we are going to be making some diet changes because you said you wanted to pursue high level hockey. So we're going to help you make some changes. But this is our expectation of what you need to do to help us be successful with that. Blah, 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 blah. So having those expectations set early and ahead of time can really help keep that open line of communication and keep it positive and productive, as opposed to things kind of getting shut down a little bit. That's something that's really important to have between the two parties. And the other thing is, be honest with your goalies too, right? Like, I know sometimes as a parent of a 5 and a 2 year old, I know sometimes we can kind of you know fib a little bit just for, saying, oh, we can't go to the park today, the park's closed, or something like that, right? But as best you can when it comes to this sort of stuff, if you can kind of be honest with them and just say, hey, we can't do that camp this year, it's just, not in the funds, or hey, we can't go play with your friends that weekend, we have a tournament over here, or whatever the case is. Like, just being honest with why you're making the decisions, and anything like that can really, I don't know, help build that trust and build that line of communication as well. um but yeah, so like I kind of said earlier in the episode, the big takeaway from all of this is just finding ways to get everybody on the same page and to do it early and ahead of time. Whatever relationship we're talking about, that can really help translate to success when it comes to communication with goaltending. So on the ice, off the ice, all of that, if you can set expectations early for everybody involved, that makes it so much easier when you actually get into those situations. So that's kind of it for what I have there. Again, the big theme, kind of touched on it earlier, but the big theme is just making sure you communicate ahead of time and early so that everybody is on the same page. And when it happens, when you actually get into that situation, everything's automatic and people know what they need to do. And again, just having kind of that open relationship with coaches, with parents, with teammates, being collaborative, being productive, and being professional in those conversations can really help go a long way. So that's something to just keep in mind when you are having these conversations. Um, and yeah, it just really ends up translating to success for everybody involved, both the team, the goalies, players, coaches, parents. The better that we can communicate, the better that all of that becomes. That's kind of all that I have for you guys today. So thanks again for tuning in and listening to me ramble for 40 minutes. Um, if you are watching on the YouTube side of things, if you could throw us a like and a subscribe, that would be very much appreciated. And again, as we touched on earlier, whatever podcast player you're listening to, if we're listening to the podcast, if you could give us a rating and review, share the show, tell all your goalie friends about it. We try and give you guys good content every week and something to kind of take away from each episode. If you guys have a listener question or any feedback or anything, you can go to the DIYgoalie.com/podcast, which soon will be truenorthgoaltending.com/podcast. But there's a form that you can fill out to leave a question, both text and audio. If you have an audio file of a question you want us to play, we can do that for sure. You can follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at the DIY Goalie. You can follow us at True North Goaltending on Facebook or YEG Goalie Coach on Instagram. You can check out the merchandise that we have for sale, as well as our courses online at the DIYgoalie.com. We also kind of offer some services like video breakdowns, mentorships, all of that stuff. So you can check that out on the website. Thanks again for tuning in, guys. It was a pleasure. You guys have a good night and make some saves.